Jesus said, if anybody wishes to be first, must be the last of all and the servant of all. It kind of goes against what we normally think. We normally think to be first, you got to defeat everybody else. You got to be better than they are. Well, when I read that passage about whoever wishes to be first must be the last of all and servant of all, I thought of some people, a whole long list. I'm only going to talk about a few of them who kind of lived that out. One was St. Francis. He's the saint I know best. And St. Francis, as you might know, was the son of a rich cloth merchant in Assisi. And he had great visions of himself receiving a lot of glory in war. So he practiced as a soldier, and his dad bought him a horse and his armor, and he got a big sword, and he went off to war, and sure enough, he got captured. For a year or so, he was in prison until he was ransomed, and he was kind of sick and took a time to recover. When he recovered, it's like, I got to go back there and seek some glory for myself. And on his way there, he had a vision in a dream, and in the dream, someone asked him, he says, who would you rather serve, Francis, the master or the servant? And Francis says, well, of course, the master. And he says, then why are you serving the servant? So he left everything and went back home and went through a difficult time and through his own prayer and thought until he discovered what he was to do in his life. And what he discovered what he was to do in his life was to serve the poor. So he got rid of everything that he had, all his, dispossessed himself of his father's riches, put on the poor habit, went out to serve the poor. He served the lepers and was a big force in changing the church. And today, Francis is one of the best-known saints throughout the world. But he went about it a different way, didn't he? Brought God the glory, went to serve God. Another thought, one that came to my mind, an easy one, was Mother Teresa. She was serving girls in a high school that came from poor families. And she got a call within a call. She felt a call to move from that into serving the poor in Calcutta, to go out to the streets of Calcutta and serve the sick or the dying. Now there's the way to get your name in the paper, isn't it? Go among the poorest of the poor, one at a time, serve the dying, the poor, the needy. Well, she did that, and soon enough people came to follow her, and you know the rest of the story. That she became a very powerful woman, short little woman as she was, but when she received the Nobel Peace Prize in 1979, and she spoke, people listened, came through service. The last one I'll mention is Pope Francis. If you ever watched the day when he was elected Pope, he walked out onto the balcony and they tried to put this big regal robe over him, and he wouldn't have any of that. He says, get that out of here. Came out on the balcony and went, good evening. And then what's the first thing he said? Pray for me. Tens of thousands of people in the square there, they all went quiet. Quiet in my house. And we prayed for him. Then after that quiet, he says, and I will pray for you. And he went on. That humility, just to begin with, was a great sign of what we have seen since then. After he was elected then, he went down to and paid his own bill at the dwelling where he was, the hotel, and got on the bus with the rest of the guys. It's like, well, we got this limo here for you. He got on the bus with the rest of the guys and went on to reach out to the poor. And we saw him go and wash the feet of people, and they weren't even Christians, and he kissed their feet. And it wasn't just a show. It was who he was, because before he was elected, we know that he lived in a poor section in Argentina of that city, and he took the bus to work. It is who he was. And through his humility, he has gained a lot of credibility, not only for himself, but even more importantly for the church. People are looking again at the Catholic Church. I've heard many stories of people who are now thinking about coming back to the church for whatever reasons they went away. It was through his humility he gained credibility. If anyone wishes to be first, you must serve all and be the last of all. It goes against what we normally think. Where we normally think we need to defeat somebody else in order to be the best, in order to be number one. And that's where the apostles were in the gospel today. They were arguing about who was the greatest. And Jesus says to them, he doesn't humiliate them, but rather Jesus says to them, you need to serve the rest. Put a child in the midst of it. And he says, paradoxically, what happens is, through your service to others, then you be recognized. That's where you get your credibility. That's where we show who we are. And instead of trying to compare ourselves with others and to compete with others, how much better would it be to believe, first of all, that we all have a place in the heart of God. We don't have to compete for God's love. How about that for a starting point? Furthermore, if you want to compare yourself to somebody else, go ahead. Go ahead. Sure, why not? But make sure that the person you're comparing yourself to is Jesus Christ. Then how are we going to do? And if any of us thinks, yeah, I'm as good as that, or I'm better, we're in deep trouble. Compare ourselves to Jesus Christ. And we'll see that we got a long way to go. And we'll be also directed right towards him, because we'll be looking at him. In fact, that's the thing to do, is to come to know Christ. Come to know his heart. And that's what happened with St. Francis. St. Francis used to say, I am the servant of the great king. People thought he was a fool, but that's who he was, as the servant of the great king. He served God and his people. Mother Teresa says, by blood I'm an Albanian. By country, in citizenship, I'm an Indian. In faith, I'm a Catholic nun. But my heart belongs to God. Pope Francis has said, look to God in all things. And there is no situation which God cannot change. Look to God in all things. So wouldn't it be better if we looked to God instead of to ourselves and came to know Christ, and then in knowing Christ to serve him in his people